In this video we're going to look at some really useful functions in SQL where we can perform mathematical operations on columns and groups of data. And just looking at the names of max, sum, AVG, min and count, you probably get an idea of what we're going to be able to do. The data set that we're going to use for all these tasks is based on the Amazon website. It's data that's been scraped from there. And if you've browsed through Amazon, you'll be familiar with the idea of reviews and ratings. So when you have purchased something, you can write a review, give it a score out of 5. And when there are reviews, if you read a helpful review, then you can click on a button and say, that helped me make my decisions. So all that information would be stored in a database. And you can see this in a table format in a spreadsheet. Spreadsheets are really good at working with numbers. It's not so good as databases for large amounts of data, extracting data using queries, but it's good for performing mathematical operations. So for example, you might want to find the average rating of everything that's been sold, which review was most helpful, so finding the maximum, or counting how many times something happened, counting if. So you can do lots of useful formula in spreadsheets. And now, by learning aggregate functions, we can do lots of similar tasks using databases. Okay. Max, min, average, sum and count are the 5 functions we need to know. And very, very often we will also use group by as part of our aggregate functions. The data that I showed you in the Amazon database, I've put into DB Fiddle, and you can use this when you're doing the aggregate functions quiz and when you're trying and practicing your aggregate functions. If you look in the num helpful and rating, those are numbers there, so they would be ones that would be quite helpful for us to use today. Let's start off with a wee simple one where we select, just like before, from our, and everything is coming from Amazon, from the Amazon table in this database. Before we would always just put the name of the field we want to search for, or a calculation as we saw most recently. But now we can put in an aggregate function. So if I wanted to find what is the highest rating, for example, it's going to be 5, but if I put select max rating and run that query, it takes a couple of seconds because there's an awful lot of data, there's thousands of rows in this, but the biggest number there is 5. Num helpful might be a more useful one there. So of all the posts, some of them would have one person thought that was helpful, maybe another one thought 10 people thought it was helpful. What was the maximum, what was the highest number of people who thought a particular review was helpful? If I run that, same as you're finding maximum standard algorithm, there's actually a review in this data set that had 270 people said that was a really helpful review. So you can see there, that is a very straightforward syntax. We say max, and then the field we want to find the maximum within. If we wanted to find the min, that would be 0, so that's a bit boring. So let's try average instead. Count the number, or to find it, and then divide by the number of records to find the average number helpful. So they are like wee formulas that you might type into a spreadsheet program, and the average number helpful was 0.3150. Let's change this time to rating. So in rating, that's a number between 1 and 5. The average rating, when we plug that in, it processes all the numbers, all the integers in that column, comes out with quite a high rating, 4.586. That's the average rating. That's not very useful though, because that's the average rating of all the products that have been sold. Within this, it's the Amazon tablets, Amazon Echoes, and all sorts of different devices. So what can be useful is if we group by something else. So let's group it by item name. Get all the things that have the same item name, group them together, and then work out the average for each item. It would be most helpful then if we can see what item has a particular average rating. Look at that code as I run it. We're selecting an item and the average rating of the item that we can calculate by grouping together item name. So this finds all of the blank records, so ignore that one. But Kindle e-readers, Amazon Fire, Amazon Echo, Amazon Fire TV stick. It finds all of the reviews for the Amazon Fire TV stick. It finds all of the ratings for the Amazon Fire TV stick, and it calculates the average rating just for that item. So that's a really, really useful chunk of code. Let's try another one where we group by rating. What would that do instead? Try and think what that would do. Within the rating you have to choose from 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5. So in fact, I'm going to try a count this time instead. Okay. Now this one might work, might not work. When we do a count, it's a wee bit different from the max, the min, the average and the sum. Count is actually counting the number of records. That one there is just counting the number of records in the entire data set. We can have a criteria, so how many ratings were 5. And what we're doing there is counting the number of rows. So actually we don't put rating in, because we're getting where rating equals 5, we're finding all the items, all the rows where rating equals 5, and we're counting the number of rows. So count, it does work if you put a field name in, but normally I would ask you to put count star, and you get exactly the same answer. How many 1-star ratings are there? Count star from Amazon, where rating equals 1, there's only 47 of them. Okay. I'm going to jump back a few slides in the presentation and think about this slide here, counting how many 5 stars and 4 stars and 3 stars and so on. We can do something like that, where we're counting the number of records, but instead of saying where rating is 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, we group by rating. Grouping by it will find all the 5s and count how many there are, all the 4s, all the 3s and so on. It's not very clear which one is which, so it's usually best if we put in whatever we grouped by in the select query as well. So there's 47 1-star reviews, 56 2-star reviews and so on. To get it even closer to the way Amazon did it, we can order by rating in descending order. And I could do a calculation and work that the percentages, so to get that view exactly. But hopefully you can see how this thing that you've probably seen before on the Amazon website is constantly changing, constantly being calculated, and uses aggregate functions to group together and do a calculation and work out the number of reviews. Okay. Before we finish off, I'll show you one thing that is a kind of a common mistake. Let's say I wanted to find item names alongside rating and counts. Doesn't really make sense to add for that, but I'll try it anyway. If you try and display something in your select line that isn't grouped by, you'll get an error. So let's think of another more useful example. Let's try we find the item name and the max rating. That sounds like it could be useful, like it should work. Find the maximum rating and then find the name of anything that had that max rating. But you'll find you can't do that, and this error message is saying you've not grouped by item name, so you can't put that in your select. Okay. Going back to num helpful, what was the most helpful post? It would be really useful if we could just say who was the reviewer who got the most helpful post. But you can't do that. You can't put extra things in your select clause unless you've grouped them. So I can group by reviewer, and that code will work. But it will also show me all the reviewers in the whole thing. It won't just show me the max, it will show me the max for every reviewer. So it's not as simple as putting anything you want into that select line. You will run into errors as you try these tasks. So just take a step back, build it up bit by bit, and you'll find that there's loads of reviewers. So that's not what we're looking for. And I'll show you another way, another time, how to find the name of the person with the most helpful review. So to sum up, aggregate functions are really useful commands for performing mathematical operations on columns of data, counting lines in the database, records in the database, summing to add up list of values, counting the number of records, finding the max or minimum value or the average value in a range of values.